everyone. Welcome back to episode 3 of the Flip Up podcast. Today, we are joined with the founder of Plateline Resource, the man, the myth, the legend, Bryan Kendrick.
Yeah, and before we get started, just want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching these, been following us on Instagram. It's really cool to see all the support, and if you want to share this with your friends, share it. Without further ado, Bryan Kendrick.
Hey guys, I'm Bryan Kendrick, and like they said, I started a kind of like a social media platform to promote cymbal playing, really get that under a spotlight, but more than just showing like some cymbal lines and stuff like that. I really wanted to spotlight the nuances that go up like with cymbal playing. There's so many details involved. So that's kind of what my platform is all about. And more specifically, my mission statement for Plateline Resource is to give value to the cymbal community by inciting innovation and sharpening its foundations. I hope to give understanding to those that don't get it and motivate those that do to establish a stronger sense of community and to evolve the art form to unreached potential.
Definitely. And I think especially in this day and age with social media, I think having that resource out there is so necessary. Like, because in last episode, we were talking about how there's not many resources out there. Like, you can go to YouTube, but it's kind of like you learn by yourself. Like, it doesn't really like teach you. So I think what you're doing is awesome, creating that platform. Which actually kind of leads me into my question. Like, what's your inspiration behind also starting Plateline Resource? Like, when did you have the idea,
Plateline Resource was started in 2015. It was after my year marching with the Madison Scouts. It was my age out for DCI. And then when I came back from that summer, that's when the cogs started turning. And I wanted to just provide value in my own way or kind of show my style of things. I thought my style and my approach to cymbal playing was a little unique, but I was also so interested in all the other different styles and how I could highlight that. And so it's been evolving for a long time here. And I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. I love doing what I do. I love highlighting players and talking to people like you guys. I'm so obsessed with the idea and concept of community. When I hop on my Instagram, which is kind of where I digest most of my content and put out most of my content, is the Instagram at Plateline_resource. You will find me there. But when I hop on there, I see all these drummers, and they're so proud of putting up progress videos, and it seems so accessible to them. They get their pad, they're throwing up their 4-bar licks and stuff, and I'm like, why can't this be the cymbal community? Like, it is just as easy to throw up our videos. And honestly, if I feel like the thing that's holding back our community is worrying that it's not polished enough. And honestly, we can never get to that level of polish that drummers are at, is because their art form has been around for so much longer. You know what I mean? Like, people have been putting up progress videos for drumming for literally centuries, seriously. And I feel like modern cymbal playing has just kind of recently took off, gotten its legs. It's evolving, and we need to put in our work in order to get that eventually polished community that we strive for. I picture this like 10 years down the road, and people, it's just the thing. You throw up your progress videos and you're collaborating with different cymbal players, and we're creating things that have never been done before. And that's what I dream about.
Yeah, definitely. Like, there's like other sources out there, right? There's like Gridbook Nation that sort of already kind of push and educate members, which I've also seen kind of, you've been doing partnerships with like other drummers in the community, which is awesome. Also kind of gets us more engaged in the circle per se. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, that's also kind of the inspiration of the podcast, right? To educate people, to kind of give this foreground of like, this is the reality, because, a lot of people kind of see it, but they're like, well, what's it like to be it? Or like, how do I shape myself there? There's not a lot of people guiding that direction.
Right.
Yeah, and with these interviews, we're definitely trying to get more perspectives coming together, because there's definitely that idea of people seeing people on other lines and they're like, oh, I'll never be able to make it at this group or this group. And then you see these people from these lines coming and talking like, it's not that hard to make a group like this. But going back to Plateline Resource, I remember when it was just a YouTube channel, and I actually started following it in high school. And I will say, the video on ups,
Yeah.
that exercise ups, changed the game for me. Like, oh my gosh, breaking
Yeah,
down an up
I
flip like
actually
that was
had
just such a
a
game changer.
CYMBAL teacher named Angel Tagadine, and he was the guy that got me into cymbals in the first place. And that was in my senior year of high school. I'll get more into that later. But Angel was really obsessed with making sure that everything had its structure. Whatever skill set we had to build, whatever. He wasn't completely hip to all the modern stuff, but he had this intelligence to him that he knew how to talk to his players in a way that helped them think of new ways of approaching those skill sets. Like he has a background in doing all sorts of like computer tech and creative pursuits at Full Sail. He was a teacher at Full Sail, I believe, and he knew how to manage teams and stuff like that and bring the most out of his teams, even though he wasn't necessarily the most skilled at that art form or whatever. Maybe he's not the best at Illustrator, but he can get the illustrators to bring out the best out, best content from them. So he brought that to cymbals, and basically he got me to really be obsessed with like getting things to be more structured, not just learning things by rote, but jumping into something that has counts, has like structure to it, and you can just insert that, and it teaches, like, that's the point of ups, is like you do ups and it kind of just teaches you how to do the flip without like getting into all these nebulous concepts. You kind of have to turn a doorknob and blah blah blah, and you can get into all the nuances later, like once they learn the exercise. But by just doing the exercise and the breakdown, there's like little thinking involved. You just follow along and you let your muscles start like getting the juices flowing in that way.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the exercise is a teacher in itself. By
Yeah,
breaking it down, all the positions, you do it enough, it's just like you know it. You don't even need
exactly.
someone telling you exactly what to do.
That was the first exercise I made for Plateline Resource, and then I was like, well, we got to get down somehow too. So I made the downs exercise, and similar to that, it is flexible. I realize that a lot of cymbal lines kind of have differentiating approaches to it. Some people pull down as an A and then kind of flip out. The way I structured the downs exercise is more of an open approach. We kind of did that when I was marching Spirit and Scouts, so I adopted that approach. But obviously, you can change up the exercise to suit the needs of the cymbal line or the approach or the style. For example, when I taught at Crossman in 18, we changed the approach. I was teaching with Zach Blessing, and he has a long history at Music City Mystique, and they tend to have a pull down A approach and then kind of flashing out towards the bottom hemisphere of the flip. So we took that and we didn't change the exercise structure at all. Instead of just opening up, we just changed the beginning of the exercise to pull down as an A to suit the needs of that style. And that's kind of the point, for the exercise to be kind of flexible enough to change a couple nuances, but you have this whole thing that's already built. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at George Mason, we use that exercise a lot also. So yeah, it's definitely gone around everywhere. So something else we sort of talked about, right, was what it was like for you in high school. Well, so like, especially like, with the age gap, like your resources were definitely very more scarce than what we've had. So like, what did you kind of have to like, what did you do to sort of kind of like brainstorm these new ideas, or like, where'd you go to like find resources?
Like brainstorming ideas for exercises?
No, just like for cymbal playing, like in like 2013, for example, right? Like juggling was sort of becoming a thing, but like it wasn't like anything like it is now.
Oh, like
something like that.
new concepts and stuff.
Yeah.
I actually had an interesting approach to this. I feel like more and more people are getting creative, but at one point, it was in what year was it? I think it was 2016 and 2017. That semester of college, or the 2 semesters of college, I took ballet and modern dance. And that had a lot of inspiration and how I think of movement and movement quality and stuff like that. And I was like, how could I apply some of these things to cymbal playing? And I really liked what they talked about in terms of performance and like what things contribute to entertainment value and whatnot. It's like more detailed than you would think, rather than being like do a jump with a twirl and like there was more to it on a microscopic level. They really broke down different movement qualities. I remember getting into my first modern dance class, and I had zero dance experience other than the 2 pliés and sachets that I do in marching band.
Yeah.
Classic drumline body.
Classic drumline body. However, it is evolving with a lot more influential figures moving into like the visual space for marching band and marching arts. But at the time, pliés, sachets, maybe a coupe here and there. But my first modern dance class, they said it was like really, they wanted to see what you were willing to do as a performer. So it was a little bit more like you're moving through space and you're thinking about like these really broad concepts, like you are slime moving and you've discovered you are alive. And then there's room for personal interpretation. And I love that. And I brought that to like the way I do cymbal auditions and stuff. So measuring the willingness of a performer is key. It's so critical. See, like if you get into the season, you've now contracted these really rigid and strict individuals that aren't really like about it. They can't like really buy into the process when you're experimenting, which often happens. And if there's like a rub there and like they're not immediately taking that information, at least trying, then you have a very difficult individual already. Even if they came in and they knew every skill on cymbals that's currently out there, they could juggle like crazy, they don't tick too much, like it's not worth taking that person if they don't have a willingness to buy into the process. If there's a process in the organization, you need them to do that. So when I run an audition, that is something I need to see right off the bat. So I usually start my auditions really kind of weird. We do performance exercises that are across the floors. I know Lucas did this when he went to try out for the Jersey Surf when I taught there.
Yeah,
that was for the 20. That was go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say doing it across the floors, you'd play some music and you'd be like, oh, so here's a song playing, just go across the floor and just feel what the music is telling you and just try and perform like it. And it'd be like Pirates of the Caribbean. So we'd all be like going across like all drunk and doing all this fun stuff, interacting with each other. It really kind of gets you out of your shell, especially like getting prepared for the performance aspect of cymbal playing because it's very visual.
Yes. I heard a quote the other day that has really resonated with me and kind of comes into play right here, is that when you're an instructor or a boss or manager or whatever, like your job should be to make the work so compelling that everybody will just do the work. If you need to like kind of pull it out of them, progress is going to be extremely limited. So you have to like reword things or change what the emphasis or the priorities are in somebody's brain in order to make it more compelling. The work might stay the same, but the way you approach it might be different.
That actually segues into the next topic, which is kind of sort of the things you look for as a tech. I know, like just looking online, right, like the Infinity Instagram for the cymbals, obviously, but I noticed that the way you sort of run your process is definitely like very unique to its own thing. Like you got your performance aspect, and then obviously, working with cymbals. Like, what do you look specifically for in a member?
There's really so I would this season that we're currently in, right before we got into it, we had kind of a looser audition, very small groups. Obviously, the pandemic's going around. People are questioning whether they should go out for this or what, And we did have a okay turnout, but my goal for the season is to nurture new minds into the world-class environment. And so far, it has been an absolute blast. The organization is in a good spot, and I have hopes for the future. But with this season, my caption manager, Mike Hansen, asked me what 3 things am I looking for. He just said 3 things. Keep it to 3 things that I'm looking for in cymbal playing. And they were kind of just like chalking up like a quick audition process. They didn't, limited time to put together a audition pamphlet or whatever. And we kind of regurgitated some of the content that we've used in years past. But we wanted to mention 3 things that we're looking for our cast. And number 1 thing was strength. If they cannot have a display of strength or ability to hold the instrument, you can't do anything with the instrument. They're heavy. If you can't hold them, it's hard to think about the nuances that you got to think about. If you need to make literally a 3-degree change in the angle of your cymbal, are you going to be able to think about that when your muscles are like shaking like crazy? Probably not. They can probably make noise, and it's the same as like doing CrossFit or any sort of physical experience. I don't know if Jack Borland ever said this to you guys, but he would say like cymbals is like an athletic event, or he would mostly say when we were flipping, like to engage the level of flexing and power to put into a flip, he would call it an athletic event. I would suddenly imagine myself as like a Michael Phelps, an Olympian athlete, like, when LeBron James like dunks the basketball and he's like that's the type of energy I'm trying to put in to like this.
And for quick context, Jack Borland, he was our cymbal tech at Scouts in 2018. So
yeah, the guru.
But yeah, what you were saying.
Oh, what was I saying? All right, I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about strength and like.
Oh, strength. Yeah, and the 3 things that you need to think about for cymbal playing in an audition. So strength was 1, and then I was teeter-tottering on mentioning this one, but one of the things I wanted them to include in their video audition was some sort of display of creativity. And sometimes it can be hard to get in that mindset. Some people literally categorize themselves right off the bat, like it's an ultimate thing. Like it is unchangeable. It is your fate. You are built as a non-creative person. And I completely disagree with that. I think anybody can be creative. Anybody. There was a member of the Infinity cymbal line that came in a couple of years ago, and he was one of these people that categorized himself as a non-creative person. How are you going to contribute to the table? How are you going to put bread on the table for your cymbal line when we get into these creative sessions for an hour or 2? Are you just going to be like looking around? And that's totally fine too. That's the start. That's like the inkling in the beginning, like the first snowflake that hits the ground that becomes the big snowball. Is looking around, the power of observation. I think cymbal lines are really, really good at that. Cymbal players have a keen eye. But eventually down the road, this guy ends up being one of the most creative people in his last season of Infinity. And it was awesome to see. He was trying new concepts that he wouldn't try before, but like that willingness to try and be creative is something that I need to see from a cymbal player as well. And then the last thing was, well, I kind of teeter-totter on this one as well. It kind of depends on the group that I'm catering it for. Obviously, this group of cymbal players this year was less experienced, more of the beginner intermediate class rather than like advanced players that have been around for a while. So I wanted to see the willingness to perform and stuff. So sometimes I'll have them do a weird video, like maybe I'll send a MP3 or something like that, and they'll have to be in front of a camera and show some expressions. And it is very unorthodox, but if you can break that barrier, you can see if you can do that, you probably are willing to do anything else the season has to offer. More than likely, you are not going to see anything that weird being given by a visual instructor throughout the season. They might be like, can you spin your body like this? And you're like, oh yeah, definitely not as weird as looking at the camera for 30 seconds and making a sad face. Like, you know what I mean? So I start heavy and then know that the season is going to be a lot easier than that.
Yeah, that's actually the one thing that I admire a lot, especially with the way cymbal playing is going now, is how expression has played such a huge part in your performance. Like back in the early 2000s, right? Cymbal lines were always that stone cold hard face, like always intense, but now you have all these different elements that really bring more character to the instrument. So
right. And I love that too. I love that aspect of cymbal. That was one of the attractors for me. I saw like, wow, the intensity. One of the first cymbal lines that I saw, obviously, for most people, it's like an SCV cymbal line, of course. They're very world-renowned. They're a cymbal line that has been established there, been there, never like left the season. Like they have a big part in the heart of that organization. So a lot of my old instructors in high school came from like the 90s and early 2000s Santa Clara Vanguard horn line and stuff like that. My band director was in one of those, and he showed me SCV, and I was all about it. It looks like the precision and like the intensity. I love that. But nowadays, you really want to be a versatile performer. You want to be able to tap into that intensity and that rigidness, but you also want to be able to be on the opposite side of that spectrum. And you're probably thinking like, wow, none of those things have to do with cymbal specific things. Maybe the creativity, a skosh, or like the strength is skosh, but those can also apply to other instruments. None of what I said applies to like a cymbal player specifically. I didn't say flip ups. I didn't say release and reloads. You got to be able to do a double bishop, an inverted bucket, and the difference between an inverted and non-inverted bucket. We have all these different terms. It's because like that stuff can come so quickly in any art form as long as you have the willingness to take the information and apply it right away. And if I have the rub, you're going to be a very hard person to teach. And I'm not about that.
So for more context, in 2017, I was auditioning for George Mason. I had gotten lessons from Bryan. I remember I was reaching out to a bunch of people because at the time you're teaching Jersey Surf. I was reaching out to like a bunch of people who marched George Mason. I was like, I really want to march George Mason. Like this was the line throughout high school that I always looked up to. They were at every single show that I was at. And so everyone connected me to Bryan. And that was the one thing that stuck with me when I was getting lessons with you, is applying everything as fast as you can. Because I think like we were talking about like the things you look for in a cymbal player. I think that's probably one of the biggest things any tech is looking for. It doesn't matter what instrument. It could be snare, it could be bass, it could be trumpet. The one thing that everyone looks for is how fast you can apply things. I think it's so important that you like factor in like where you are mentally in your space and how quickly you can execute that thing that's being thrown at you. And it goes on top of what you were saying, like the physicality, just putting yourself out there. If you let these things kind of like fuzzle your head, it's not going to be easy for you to execute those things immediately.
Right.
Like we said earlier, I was at a Jersey Surf camp the year that Bryan was teching. And as like someone who's in high school at that time, that camp and the mindset that we were supposed to get put in with all the weird things happening with the across the floors and all the new technique stuff I was learning, it was just like flipped everything I knew upside down, and having to learn all this like super fast and getting into this new mindset. It's just like having that moment was such a game changer for me, and like everything that I've ever learned in cymbal playing, and just having to keep that mindset with everything going forward. It was really helpful for me.
Yeah. You can really evolve the art form by just having a blend of skills, not staying to one lane, imagine, remember the year that the Blue Devil snare line did a moonwalk? Like, who would ever think that would ever happen in the early 2000s or in the 90s or whatever? And so many people took to that. So many people love that moment and constantly recall that moment. It's because it's a blend of skill sets. It evolved the instrument. It made it more demanding.
All right, so that's about all the time we have for this first episode, so we're going to end this here. But we do have more. We're going to have a part 2 happening with Bryan. So make sure to stay on the lookout for that, and we'll see you there.
Hit the bell.